You are listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast to give your communication skills the clarity edge with your host, Paul Leon.
Welcome back. Today in this straightforward episode, we're going to talk about why taking responsibility will make you more trustworthy. So in nature, there are mountain rams. And what we find with a lot of the younger mountain rams is that they typically run into each other and they both fall off the mountain and die because they'll butt heads and get angry. Well, one time a animal behavior studies expert was watching. He noticed that in one occurrence there was an older mountain ram that came from the top of the mountain down and saw the younger one ready to fight with him, ready to come at him. And he started to walk on his back all of a sudden because the older one lay down and let the younger one walk on his back. They both went about their way on the path and lived the life they lived. So, I say all that to draw you in more into the content of this episode, obviously. But more importantly, I really want this point to stay with you because, believe it or not, even though taking responsibility to make you more trustworthy may seem like common sense to some of us, and this might be more of a refresher, but as we all know, common sense is not always common. So let's get right into the content. Number one reason why taking responsibility makes you more trustworthy is that it makes you more authentic. See, so many times there's so many managers, salespeople, professionals across different industries that think we have to have all the answers. We have to be the subject matter expert all the time on all things. And that's total BS. You can't be all things to all people all the time. Created everything, master of none. That's just not the real world. Instead, what you want to take first is it's 100% okay to take responsibility because it makes you authentic. It makes you more real as a professional because it shows your humanity in the workplace. The second reason is rapport driven related reasons. Now, for those who don't know, there's so many different definitions of rapport out there, so many different trainings that define it differently. The one I align with the most is from the Rapport Mastery Sales Training System, which is rapport is the deepest relationship you can have in business. So let's go with that definition. Rapport is the deepest relationship you can have. Let's just say we align on that for the sake of simplicity. The next point I really want to drive into this rapport is through an analogy. Let's say you had a manager who did something absolutely egregious against you, something was completely at fault. You wrote it on paper, you took all the emotion out of it. And let's say you go to that manager and that manager says, you know what? I'm really sorry that made you feel the way you feel, but that's your problem. Now, from 1 to 10, how likely are you, 10 being the most rapport, 1 being the least, are you to really trust that manager? My assumption is it's probably not that high. Now, same scenario, totally different outcome. Here we go. Let's say you come to the manager and the manager is 100% at fault. Okay, you took all the emotion out of it, blame, it's just the way it is. The facts are the facts. And that manager says to you, you know what? That's on me. I made a mistake. I was trying to get toward this X result. What we're going to do differently is here. And I'd like to work with you to get that outcome. I totally take 100% of the responsibility. 1 to 10. How likely are you to say that you have more trust or rapport deeper with that manager who does that? My assumption is that it's probably the second one. And the third reason I really want to hone in on why taking responsibility makes you trustworthy is it is totally different to take responsibility than it is blame. See, blame is when you are 100% at fault. Responsibility is when you take 100% of the blame for everyone else to ensure that you can move toward the result. Let me give you an example. So, I was a college dropout who went back later in my late 20s. I had to study late at night. And when I was working on my bachelor's degree through the night program, I remember that there was a project where I totally missed something in my group class. And it was my fault because I was kind of the facilitator of this group project and had called the professor and I said, "Hey, professor, I just want to say I messed something up on a deadline, and it's 100% my fault. I take responsibility. It is not these other classmates' fault. And the professor paused and he said, "You know what, Paul? Listen, I appreciate you falling on the sword for your other classmates. So many people who come through this night program don't do that always. I will deduct 10% of your grade, but because you came to me, let's see what we can do toward the end result and work together. Just keep me informed. That's fair." I totally could have never told the professor and thrown my classmates under the bus. I could have done that 100%. But I had to ask myself a question. What does that do? What does that do to blame someone else and not take responsibility? And who does it help? So again, when we take responsibility, we become more trustworthy. And sometimes we do have to lay down and let people walk on our back. But you know what? It's only temporary, because on the other side, you both get to walk your path and live a better quality life as a result of it.
Thank you for listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast. Subscribe to where you listen to podcasts. And if you want to hire Paul to train or speak for your team, visit persistencemastery.com and fill out the request training form.